Welcome back to Bits Be Trippin'. Now first, before we start this episode, I want to apologize for taking 2 weeks to get this video out to you. I know there's a lot of folks looking forward to our videos, and we're going to try to speed that up. I know I say that almost every video, but really, we are going to make a concerted effort. It's been a busy last few weeks. We're trying to get a lot on deck for you guys. I promise you we'll start bringing these videos out a lot faster and hopefully quench that thirst from some of those comments that we're seeing down below. Now that being said, let's go ahead and start episode 14. This is our free OS review. See if we can give you guys some quick pointers to save yourself about $100 on one of these mining rigs. And in addition, to follow on with our suit from the last video, the cryptocurrency of the week, which we are highlighting Dogecoin. We'll finish it off with a few sneak peeks for the next episode. This is your host Carter. Let's get into this. Now first, let's take a look at the rig that we're going to be using. We're going to use a custom painted BBT 2.0 rig. We painted red with kind of a splash of gray. The Intel G3220, of course the H81 Pro BTC motherboard, 8 gigs of BallistaX memory, a 1300 G2 EVGA Supernova power supply. Wrap those with 6 Twin Frozer R9 270, the non-X version. And yes, you do see a 120 gig SSD that is purely used during our test case here for Windows to set on. We want to show you the config that we're running in Windows and see if we can replicate or get better results in the free OSs that we're going to highlight, which will circumstantially be on a 8 gig USB thumb drive. Now, one other point on this rig I want to make sure that we show, we are going to be using 4 different riser types on this rig. Now normally I'd be against this with doing a different OS, but quite frankly we're going to start with Windows. I'm going to make sure it's locked in, running good with Windows. If we were having any issues between the risers, we'd find that in a normal platform that we use all the time. So if we can get it working right in Windows and it's consistent over time, then we're going to roll that right into these free OS builds. Just a quick highlight of the different risers. We have a 24-inch USB riser, a 40-inch extension USB riser, a 8-inch normal ribbon riser that we use in almost all of our builds. These are obviously all 1X to 16X. Then we have finally the ASRock Pro BTC riser that ASRock has created for the H81 specifically. Technically, you could use it for other builds, and we'll test that in another episode with 6 of these in one rig. But for this purpose, we're going to just test it in this one rig, which uses 2 separate SATA cables. Different kind of build. Well, we'll get into it in another episode. And finally, the settings that we're going to be using with this build for these cards: intensity 19, 24,000 on the thread concurrency, 1130 core, 1500 memory clock, power tune of 30, all running stock voltages. I understand that there are other mining programs for this purpose. We're going to be using CG Miner 3.7.2 in Windows, and we'll be using CG Miner and a few of the other free OSs, and including the last OS we'll be using SG Miner, but with the not using X intensity, we'll be using the regular intensity. Now let's get right into this Windows build. Real quick, these settings running, this is our benchmark. Can we achieve or get better in the free OSs? As we can see here, they lock in right around 490, 488, somewhere around there, for a total of 2.88 mega hash. We take a look after a few minutes, still locked in, still running strong. This is a good runner in Windows. Now let's go ahead and see what it takes to get a new OS and test these settings out again. Now the goal here is very simple. What is the best, easiest free OS that we can throw onto a memory stick and reduce the overhead cost on the rig itself? Windows 8.1 OS is about $100. Then you got around another almost $100 for a good SSD drive. So right there's almost a couple $100 that you could save on the rig if you can switch to a reliable free OS that allows you to do the same task. Now in our research, we came up with 3 different iterations that could possibly solve this problem: BAMT 1.6, BAMT 2.0, and Pimp. Now, before you start cracking up of like, what the hell did he just say? Did he say Pimp? Yes, I did say Pimp. Pimp stands for Portable Instant Mining Platform. And before I go any further, I want to come right out and say this entire episode was supposed to be based on BAMT 1.6. And then shortly after our filming and working through some of the stuff of getting it set up, BAMT 2.0 came out. So then we had to take a look at that to see if there was any differences. But since it was just forked and somebody else worked on it, it was a little confusing to us. So we were looking at what had changed. And then lo and behold, this Pimp comes out right as we're going into post-production for this video. So both 1.6 and 2.0 pretty out of the box working, but had to do some troubleshooting to get it to work. However, Pimp out of the box worked flawlessly. We tried it on several different rigs just to see if we could get it to hiccup. We didn't have any issues with this. This OS, by far, bar none, is the one I would recommend. It is the one I'm going to spend the most time on the rest of this episode. And while I know a lot of people put a lot of time, and I thank them for their effort on 1.6 and 2.0, we had troubles getting it to work with our configurations right out of the gate. We spent hours researching and making sure that things were right. And quite honestly, I could never get it to replicate even close to what I was doing in Windows. We topped out around 411 kilohash and it would freeze up randomly. I could never get BAMT 1.6 to stay stable very long. And I'm going to go through and show people how to get to it, where it's at. And while all of these Linux based mining software pretty much use the same protocol, they use the same methodology to get downloaded. Essentially, somebody hosts a file somewhere, and or you can use BitTorrent to download it from the reputable sources, which I would consider in the Reddit communities. We'll put those down in our descriptions on how to get to it, but I'm going to focus the rest of this on the downloading of Pimp, and you can pretty much follow a lot of these same exact steps with getting BAMT 1.6 and BAMT 2.0. Now, before I lose any of you, because probably a lot of you are looking forward to seeing BAMT in this, you want to pay attention to this. This works. It works out of the box. They have a good community that gets back to you very quickly. You'll want to watch this if you want to save some money on your rig, or if you're building a rig, or you want to divest some of your rigs that you have built from those nice expensive SSD drives and want to recoup some of that cost. You want to watch the rest of this. Now, very first, let me set the scene here. You're sitting at your computer, you're ready to download this. You have your USB stick in your hand. You put it into your computer. Let's say you're using Windows. This test case is using Windows to download Pimp. You navigate to getpimp.org. You can get either the torrent file of it, or you can go straight to Mega and download it. For our purposes, we are getting it from Mega. That pulls down really quick. Once that's down, you unzip it. You're essentially going to have your image file, and you're going to have this program called Win32 Disk Image. You launch that Win32 Disk Image. You make sure your drop down to select the device that you're going to write the image to is your memory stick. Please make sure you pick the right one. You don't want to overwrite any of your USB other drives if you have any external drives plugged in. Point it to your USB stick. You have to browse and look for that image file, which should be in that same one directory down. You select that and then you hit write. Now what this is doing is writing that entire OS to that memory stick. This task, depending on your computer and your speed of your USB drive, could take up to 20 minutes. Once that disk image is done, safely remove your USB stick. That is now your OS for your miner. You walk that over to your miner, put it into a USB drive, make sure you have, if you have a current hard drive plugged in, unplug that, then make sure when you boot up, you go into your BIOS, and we found good success with startup if you have it set to a legacy USB, not the UEFI. Now, once Pimp starts to boot up, it takes about 2 minutes. It'll come to a screen where you'll hit enter and you'll type in the login and password. Now, those are both located on the website, but essentially it's root and then live, L-I-V-E, for the password. That'll launch you onto the command prompt. Now, you can go right in and you can type PIMP to get a list of commands. You type edit, you put your pool information in there, set your settings up, and you'll use Control plus X to exit that edit screen. You'll get a prompt at the bottom where you'll hit yes, and then you'll have to hit enter to confirm the save. Once you've done that, or at least once we did that, we were able to type RB to reboot, and then it actually launched into a lightweight GUI interface that then allowed you to manage everything from a mouse point click environment. Now, once in this GUI environment, right click is your friend. You right click, you go into the different settings that you want to. If you want to modify anything, that's the main configuration management right there when you right click. Now, we launched Weasel and then went to localhost because there is a pool manager that's running in the background. It's being broadcasted on localhost. You go to this, and then that really is the meat and potatoes of this system. You go in there, you'll see the different pools. You can make adjustments to that. You can drill down into the very specific card. You can go into the different pool information, some of the history of that piece. Really, it offers a very good environment to watch the activity of this particular miner. Now, as you can see, some of the tolerances here, both for rejects and for the temperature, were set to show little red indicators. It isn't affecting anything. It's just more of an information purpose for you to show that it's out of a tolerance level to indicate red. But quite frankly, it's just running through, giving you some information. You can see that it's still hashing. The settings being locked in the same that we had in Windows, doing very well and really close to almost exactly the same as Windows. So both the riser's not affecting it, nor really the OS. It really comes down to those specific settings. And I've tried to debunk this a few times, but I have yet to find a setting or a rate on a particular card that somebody has gotten on a different OS, and I have been able to either replicate that or exceed it in Windows. I just don't think the operating system has that big of an effect on the hash rates. But the good news here is this OS is free and it fits on an 8 gig memory stick, a USB stick. So it keeps the cost very, very down. I mean, you're talking $200 off a mining rig, and with the prices the way they've been, this is a good rate. Now, the point of this episode was to instill some confidence that there are some free OSs out there that work out of the box and that are rock solid. So far, from what we've seen from Pimp, that is the case. With BAMT 1.6 and 2.0, they both worked. We did have some configuration issues to get things to work. Plus, we've had some freeze-ups where I did not have any freeze-ups in Windows, and I haven't had any freeze-ups in Pimp yet. So maybe some more tweaking would alleviate that, but we did have some issues with that. I do want to encourage anybody that are using these free OSs to please donate. If it's BAMT 1.6, BAMT 2.0, or Pimp, if you do have a few extra coins to spare, do send these folks. They spend a lot of time, getting this ready for folks and, to really try to answer those issues. They have very active Reddit communities, and get that feedback out to them. Now, let's switch gears a bit and focus on the cryptocurrency of the week. And I really should say the cryptocurrency for the next few months, which is going to be Dogecoin. Doge, while starting as an internet meme, really has turned into a media powerhouse. This is the calm before the storm. I want to start that right out of the gate. With Dogecoin donating enough to sponsor a NASCAR team for Talladega is amazing. It's amazing in a lot of aspects of bringing something like cryptocurrency to the masses and to an audience that, quite honestly, probably have no idea what it is. Yet that won't matter. It will be engaging. Folks will wonder what it is. They'll research it. They'll find out more about it. And that's kind of the point. And for that exact reason, I'm very bullish on Dogecoin. I think it's a good buy. Right now, it's right under 100 Satoshis per coin. It's half of what its value was, much like all the rest of the other altcoins. It is a good buy. A huge media exposure. Buy, buy, buy. So now that you know my position on Doge, at least for the next solid month leading up to the race and through Talladega, not to mention the difficulty drop over the last few days, mainly because everybody's switching around to different coins, Dogecoin will be getting some loving from our mega hash. Now, in closing, don't forget to subscribe. Look us up on Twitter. We got some new stuff coming out to you. We're going to go through that Blue Babe computer case on the next episode with some smaller form factor 750s. We're going to cover a whole bunch of risers, see what worked, what didn't. More of an elaborate review than what we did here in this review. And then, of course, I keep touting the mineral oil mining rig. That's a very comprehensive build. If you want to catch anything on that, check us out on Twitter. It's going to be a damn near documentary versus an episode. There's been so much that's been involved with getting this thing to function and work right, and we want to bring that to you in its full entirety. So stick with us, like us, share us, retweet us, get the word out, and we'll keep bringing some awesome hardware for you. Stay tuned.
The bits be trippin'.